The gravity plating on the loading dock of Crown's Reach hummed with a low, bone-rattling vibration that never truly ceased. It was the heartbeat of the station, a rhythm of commerce and desperation that Gabriel Ryland felt deep in the marrow of his shrapnel-scarred shins. Gabe wiped a mixture of grease and condensation from his forehead with the back of a gloved hand. He was a large man, built like a fortress that had withstood too many sieges, with broad shoulders that perpetually hunched forward, as if bracing for an impact that was always seconds away. His hair was graying at the temples, premature for his age, but consistent with the mileage on his soul. "Hey, Ryland, move it or lose the payout," the foreman bellowed from the catwalk above. Gabe did not look up. He simply adjusted his grip on the magnetic lift-assist clamps. The container before him was stamped with the seal of the Aurelian Trade Guild, a complex geometric pattern of gold and violet that looked out of place amidst the rust-streaked steel of the human sector. It contained luxury fabrics from the inner worlds, destined for the diplomatic quarters on the upper levels. It was worth more than Gabe would earn in 50 lifetimes. He heaved. The maglev assistant whined in protest, taking 80% of the weight. But the remaining 20% was enough to make his old injuries flare. A sharp, electric line of pain shot up his right arm, tracing the path of a nerve damaged 10 years ago in the border skirmishes. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the phantom sensation of plasma burns, and guided the crate into its locking mechanism. The mag locks engaged with a heavy clank. "Clear," Gabe muttered, his voice gravelly from breathing recycled air that tasted of ozone and stale coffee. He checked his wrist unit. The shift was over. The holographic display flickered, showing his credit balance in angry red numerals. He was short. Again. A notification pulsed on the screen. A sterile message from Station Administration Resident Rylan. Outstanding debt for Habitation Unit 4B has exceeded the permissible grace period. Please remit payment of 600 credits within 48 standard hours. Failure to comply will result in immediate relocation to Sector 9 temporary housing. Sector 9. The slums near the reactor shielding. It was cold down there. The radiation shielding was patchy at best, and the air scrubbers were older than the station itself. Gabe killed the display. He could handle the cold. He could handle the radiation sickness that would inevitably come with cheap housing. But Mia was 10 years old. Her lungs were still growing. Sector 9 would kill her spirit before the radiation even touched her cells. He stripped off his work gloves, revealing hands that were rough, calloused, and shaking slightly from exhaustion. He needed a drink. He needed a miracle. But mostly, he needed to pick up his daughter. The station school was a glorified holding pen located in the mid-levels, sandwiched between a hydroponics bay and a noodle shop. The air always smelled faintly of fertilizer and soy sauce. When Gabe arrived, Mia was sitting alone at a corner table, her small face illuminated by the soft blue glow of a datapad. She was constructing a holographic model of a binary star system, her fingers moving with a dexterity that made Gabe's chest ache with pride. She had her mother's eyes bright, inquisitive, and incapable of hiding the truth. But today, those eyes were red-rimmed. Gabe knelt beside her, his joints popping audibly. "Hey, star stuff, rough day." Mia looked up, quickly swiping the hologram away. "It was fine, Papa." "You are a terrible liar, Mia. You get that from me." He gently tugged a lock of her dark hair. "What happened?" She hesitated, looking down at her scuffed boots. "Tarek and the others. They said we smell like coolant fluid and processed algae." Gabe stiffened. The smell of the docks. It clung to him. No matter how many times he ran his uniform through the sonic cleaners, it was the scent of poverty. "And what did you say?" Gabe asked, keeping his voice level. "I told them that coolant fluid keeps the station from exploding," Mia said, her voice small but firm. "And that algae produces 70% of the oxygen they breathe. So really." We smell like survival." Gabe let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. A small, sad smile touched his lips. "That is my girl. Scientific accuracy as a defense mechanism." "Then Tarek said you are just a crate pusher," Mia added, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He said you are a nobody." Gabe felt a familiar darkness coil in his gut. Nobody. If only they knew. If only they knew about the destroyer-class vessels he had outmaneuvered in the Aros Gate. If only they knew about the tactical commendations he had buried in a lockbox at the bottom of his duffel bag. But being a somebody got you killed. Or worse. It got you noticed by the people who started wars. "Tarek does not know what he is talking about," Gabe said softly. "I know," Mia said, looking him dead in the eye. "I told him my dad was a hero, that he saved people, that he just does not like to brag about it because heroes are humble." The words were a physical blow. Gabe closed his eyes for a second, fighting the urge to flinch. He was no hero. He was a survivor who had run out of places to run. "Come on," Gabe said, standing up and offering her his hand. "Let us go home. I think we have enough credits for synthetic chicken tonight." "Real synthetic chicken?" Mia asked, brightening. "Not the protein paste." "The solid kind," Gabe promised, knowing it would cost him the last of his daily ration allowance. Top shelf. The solid kind of dinner was eaten in relative silence in their cramped habitation unit. The walls were thin metal, vibrating with the footsteps of neighbors above and beside them. After Mia had climbed into her bunk, clutching her datapad like a teddy bear. Gabe sat at the small, fold-out table and stared at the object in his hand. It was a necklace, simple silver chain, holding a jagged piece of metal. It wasn't jewelry. It was a fragment of a hull plate from the ship where his wife, Elena, had died during the evacuation of Colony 6. It was the only thing he had left of her. He had checked the market value yesterday. The metal was a rare alloy used in military-grade plating. It would fetch enough to pay the rent for 3 months. Maybe 4, if he haggled. He ran his thumb over the jagged edge. Selling it felt like selling the last piece of his soul. But keeping it while Mia shivered in Sector 9. That was a sin Elena would never forgive. His wrist unit buzzed again. Another message. Not from the landlord this time, but from the dockmaster, Rylan. "The heavy lift contract for the morning shift has been canceled. Automation drones are taking over the sector. Your hours are cut by half effective immediately." Gabe stared at the message. Half. He couldn't pay the rent in half. He couldn't even pay the interest on the arrears. He looked at the necklace, then at the sleeping form of his daughter. The universe was not just indifferent. It was actively tightening the noose. He needed a job, a second job, a third job, anything. He knew the night shift manager on the observation deck sometimes needed unauthorized security for private diplomatic meetings off the books. Cash in hand. It was risky. But Gabe was past the point of caution. He stood up, tucked the necklace back into his shirt, and grabbed his jacket. "Sleep tight. Star stuff," he whispered. "Papa has to go see a man about a crate." The observation deck of Crown's Reach was the one place on the station where you could almost forget you were living in a tin can floating in the void. It was a massive, domed structure located at the very pinnacle of the station's spire, reserved mostly for the wealthy and the diplomatic corps. At this hour, it should have been closed for maintenance, which was exactly why Gabe was heading there. The night manager, a slippery character named Silas, often used the downtime to cut deals, but when the lift doors slid open, Silas was nowhere to be seen. The vast chamber was empty, bathed in the ethereal, shifting light of the Orion Nebula that filled the panoramic transparisteel windows. The nebula was a bruising mix of violet, indigo, and blood orange, a celestial storm frozen in time. Gabe stepped out, his boots making no sound on the plush carpeting, a luxury he hadn't felt underfoot in years. He scanned the room, habit dictating he checked the corners and shadows. The room was empty, save for one figure. Someone was sitting on the bench closest to the glass, silhouetted against the burning starlight. They sat with a stillness that was unnatural, a rigidity that spoke of immense internal pressure. Gabe hesitated. He should leave. This wasn't his world. If security found a dock worker up here, he would be spacing debris before he could explain. But something about the posture stopped him. The slump of the shoulders. The way the head was bowed. It was the posture of a soldier sitting in the dropship, waiting for the ramp to lower into hell. He had seen it 1,000 times. He had felt it. He moved closer, intending to just check if the person was conscious. As he drew near, the light from the nebula caught the figure's profile. It was a woman, or rather, an Aurelian female. She was tall, even sitting down. Her skin was the color of pale moonlight, translucent enough to hint at the violet veins beneath. She wore the plain, unassuming tunic of a civilian traveler, but the fabric shimmered with a weave that no civilian could afford. But it was her hands that gave her away, resting on her knees. Her wrists were adorned with intricate, bioluminescent patterns, natural markings of the Aurelian highborn. They usually pulsed with a steady, soothing rhythm, synchronized with her heartbeat. Right now, they were flashing erratically, staccato bursts of distressed light. She was staring out at the void. But Gabe got the distinct impression she wasn't looking at the stars. She was looking at the nothingness between them. She was weeping. It wasn't the sobbing of a child or the wailing of the bereaved. It was a silent, terrifying dismantling of a person. Tears that glowed faintly, a biological quirk of her species, streamed down her cheeks, dripping onto her lap like liquid starlight. Gabe froze. He knew the protocol. You do not approach the highborn. You do not speak to them unless spoken to. You certainly do not witness their vulnerability. He turned to leave. He had his own problems. He had a debt to pay and a daughter to feed. He didn't need complications. Turn around. Rylan. Walk away. He took one step back toward the lift. Then he remembered Mia's voice. Heroes are humble. They save people. He cursed silently. He wasn't a hero, but he wasn't a monster either. He turned back and walked toward the bench. He stopped respectfully 3 meters away. If you are planning to step out into that cold, Gabe said, his voice rough but low, shattering the silence, you should at least leave a note, or tell someone your name. The figure flinched violently, as if he had physically struck her. She spun around, her eyes widening. They were Aurelian eyes, no sclera. Just pools of shifting, luminescent iris, right now. They were wide with shock and fear. Her voice was melodic, harmonic, sounding like two people speaking in unison. I did not hear you approach. I have had practice walking quietly, Gabe said. He didn't move closer. You look like you are waiting for a verdict, miss. She stared at him, seemingly trying to process his presence. A human, a laborer, judging by the grease stains on his jacket and the weariness etched into his face. Nobody. She wiped her face hastily, the glowing tears smearing slightly before fading. I am just admiring the view. Please leave me. The view is nice, Gabe agreed, not moving. But nobody cries over a nebula unless they are allergic to stardust. And I do not think you are allergic, she stiffened, her regal bearing attempting to reassert itself through the grief. You are insolent. And you are in trouble, Gabe countered. He gestured to her wrists, where the light was still spasming. Your pulse patterns are spiking, as a human. I would say you are about to have a heart attack. In an Aurelian, I am guessing it means you are spiraling. She looked down at her wrists, as if betraying her own biology. She covered them with her hands. It does not matter. It is merely a calculation error, a glitch in the probability matrix of my life. That is a fancy way of saying you are screwed, Gabe said. She let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Yes, I suppose that is the human term for it. I am screwed. She turned back to the window. I have 30 cycles. 30 days. In your measurement. Gabe waited. He didn't push. He just stood there. A solid, unmoving presence in a world that was clearly spinning out of control for her. In 30 days, she continued, the words spilling out as if she couldn't hold them back any longer. I must choose a mate, a husband, from a list provided by the regent. Arranged marriage, Gabe nodded. Old-fashioned, but not usually enough to make someone look at the airlock like it is an exit door. It is not just a marriage, she whispered. It is a deletion. If I do not choose. My genetic markers are harvested, my consciousness is synchronized with the grid, and I am sent to the Oracle Temple. I become a node, a processor. I cease to be Ceres. I become history. Ceres. The name clicked. Gabe felt a cold bucket of water dump over his head. He looked at her again. Really looked at her. The high cheekbones, the specific violet hue of her skin. He had seen her face on the news feeds projected in the station plaza. Princess Ceres Valor, second in line to the emerald throne of the Aurelian Dominion. You are the princess, Gabe said, the realization landing heavily in the space between them. She looked at him, bracing for the inevitable shift in his demeanor, the bowing, the scraping, or the greedy calculation. I am, she said. Does that change the view? No, Gabe said. It just means your problems are way above my pay grade, he sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. Regent Dravik, that is who is pulling the strings. Right, I heard he is a piece of work. Ceres blinked. You speak of the High Regent with a remarkable lack of fear. I am a dock worker, Highness. The only thing I fear is the rent collector and bad synthetic chicken. Gabe leaned against the railing, looking out at the stars. So, Dravik gives you a list of his cronies. You pick one. He owns you. You pick none. The Oracle grid owns you. What is the play? The Oracle stated that my union with a high-ranking noble is necessary for imperial stability, Ceres said bitterly. It predicts chaos if I remain independent. My father, the Imperator, believes the grid is absolute. He will not intervene. Systems, Gabe scoffed. People build systems to justify doing what they wanted to do anyway. If a computer tells you to jump off a cliff, it is usually because the guy who programmed it wants your shoes. Ceres stared at him. Her bioluminescence slowed, the frantic flashing settling into a steady, thoughtful pulse. She had never heard a human speak like this. Usually, they were obsequious or resentful. This man was tired, but solid. You do not believe in the Oracle's wisdom, she asked. I believe in what I can see, Gabe said. I believe in keeping my kid fed. I believe that anyone who tells you that your life is a math equation that needs to be solved is lying to you. He pushed off the railing. Look, Highness, I am sorry about your 30 days, truly, but standing here staring at the dark is not going to change the algorithm. Go home. Get angry. Break something. It feels better than crying. He turned to walk away again. He had wasted enough time. Silas wasn't coming, and he had a necklace to pawn if he wanted to keep Mia indoors. Wait, her voice stopped him. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. Gabe turned. Ceres was standing now. She looked at him with an intensity that was unsettling. Her eyes were glowing brighter, scanning him, not like a threat, but like a solution. You possess a bitterness toward authority, she observed. And you have a child. I do, Gabe said, his eyes narrowing. Leave her out of this. You are in financial distress, she continued, her gaze dropping to his frayed cuffs. And you are a citizen of the Alliance, not a subject of the Dominion. I am broke. Yeah. What is your point? Ceres took a step forward. The despair was gone from her face, replaced by a sharp, terrifying intelligence. The Treaty of Eros, she said. Article 14, Section 2. It was a concession regarding diplomatic immunity and interspecies unions. I am not a lawyer, Princess. It states that if a member of the Aurelian royal family enters into a union with a non-Aurelian citizen of the alliance, one who holds no noble title or political rank, the union falls under joint jurisdiction. The oracle grid cannot claim primary authority over the lineage because the genetic data is considered contaminated by external variables. Gabe stared at her. He didn't like where this was going. He didn't like it at all. So, Sarah said, taking a deep breath. She looked him straight in the eyes. I need a husband. Human, Gabe laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. Good luck with that. Try the officer's mess on level 2. They love shiny things. No, Sarah said, stepping closer. Not an officer. An officer has rank. An officer can be bought or commanded by Dravik. I need nobody. I need a chaotic element. I need someone the oracle cannot predict. She pointed a long, slender finger at his chest. I need you. The silence on the observation deck was absolute. You are insane, Gabe said flatly. I am a crate lifter. I have 600 credits of debt and a bad back. I am not Prince Charming. I do not need Prince Charming, Sarah said, her voice steely. I need a shield, a legal shield. 1 year, she said quickly, seeing him turn away. A contract marriage, 1 standard year. I will pay off your debts, all of them. I will establish a trust for your child, enough to buy a house in a garden world, enough to ensure she never has to eat whatever it is you eat ever again. Gabe stopped. A house, a real house, with windows that opened to air that didn't smell of ozone. A school where Mia wouldn't be bullied for smelling like a dock. And in return, Gabe asked, his voice low, I become a target for every noble in the Dominion. I become the guy Dravik wants dead. They cannot touch you, Saris insisted, though her voice wavered slightly. You would be a consort. You would have diplomatic protection. Protection. Gabe spun around, his anger flaring. Lady, I survived a war where protection meant a sheet of tin foil against plasma fire. There is no such thing as safety when powerful people lose face. He shook his head. No. Find another patsy. I have a daughter to keep alive. I am not risking her for your political games. You are the only one, Saris cried out, her composure cracking. The only one who stopped, she shouted. Hundreds of people passed this deck today. Security drones, diplomats, servants. They saw me. They saw a princess sitting in the dark, and they walked past because it was inconvenient to notice my pain. You are the only one who stopped to tell me not to jump. She looked at him, her glowing eyes swimming with fresh tears. The oracle says humans are selfish, chaotic, and incapable of higher loyalty. But you stopped. Why did you stop? Gabe clenched his jaw. Why had he stopped? Because he saw the same look in her eyes that he saw in the mirror every morning. Because he remembered Elena holding his hand as the life faded out of her. Telling him to be kind, even when the world wasn't. Because it was cold, Gabe muttered, and nobody should be alone in the cold. Then do not leave me alone in it now, Saris whispered. Gabe looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw the fear she was trying to hide with royal bluster. He saw a woman fighting for her life against a machine that wanted to turn her into a battery. But then he saw Mia. He saw Mia sleeping in a metal box, dreaming of stars she would never visit, destined for Sector 9. 5 million credits, Gabe said. The number hung in the air. Absurd and heavy. The series didn't blink. 10 million, deposited into an irrevocable escrow account tonight. 10 million credits. He could buy a ship. He could buy a small moon. He could buy Mia a future where the word debt didn't exist. 1 year, Gabe said. His voice, sounding like it belonged to someone else. Strictly business, no funny stuff. My daughter stays with me, and she stays safe. If a single hair on her head is harmed, the deal is off, and I take you apart. I do not care if you are a princess or a god. Saris exhaled, a sound like a deflating lung. Agreed. 1 year. Strictly business. She extended her hand. The bioluminescence on her wrist flared a bright, steady gold, the color of a binding oath. Gabe looked at his own hand. Scarred, stained with grease. He wiped it on his pants, then reached out and took hers. Her skin was cool, smooth as polished glass. I am Gabriel, he said. Gabe. I am Saris, she replied. As their hands touched, the oracle grid, light years away on Aurelia Prime, registered a microscopic anomaly in its probability stream, a variable it had not accounted for, a father who had nothing left to lose. Gabe walked back to the habitation unit in a daze. The station felt different now. The hum of the gravity plating didn't feel like a weight. It felt like a countdown. He entered the small, dark room. Mia was still asleep, clutching her data pad. Her breathing was soft, rhythmic, the most peaceful sound in the universe. He sat on the edge of her bunk and brushed the hair from her forehead. He had just sold himself to an alien princess. He had just painted a target on his back the size of a supernova. He had just declared war on an empire and a computer god. But for the first time in 10 years, he wasn't thinking about how to pay for breakfast. Pack your bags, star stuff, Gabe whispered into the darkness. We are moving up. He touched the necklace under his shirt. The jagged metal felt warm against his skin. I hope you are watching, Elena, he thought, because I think I just did something incredibly stupid, or incredibly brave. Only time and the oracle would tell. The morning sun of Crown's Reach was artificial, a harsh yellow tungsten glow that buzzed as it powered up, signaling the start of the standard day cycle. It filtered through the grimy porthole of Unit 4B, illuminating dust motes that danced in the stale air. Gabriel Rylan sat at the small, fold-out table, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that was more sludge than liquid. He had not slept. The adrenaline of the night before had faded, replaced by a cold, hard knot of anxiety in his stomach. He had made a deal with a princess. He had sold his anonymity for 10 million credits. He looked across the room to the bunk where Mia was stirring. She stretched, her small arms reaching up, and for a moment, she looked so much like her mother that Gabe had to look away. Papa, Mia's voice was thick with sleep. Did you get the job? Gabe set the mug down. This was the first hurdle. Mia was 10, but she possessed the observational skills of a surveillance drone. If he lied, she would know. If he told her the whole truth, it would terrify her. He had to find the middle ground. I did, Gabe said, forcing a smile that felt tight on his face. But it is not a normal job. Star stuff. Come here. We need to have a briefing. Mia climbed out of bed, her oversized sleep shirt trailing on the floor, and sat opposite him. She pulled her knees to her chest, sensing the shift in his tone. Is it dangerous? She asked. That was always her first question. Everything is a little dangerous, Gabe admitted. But this is different. You know the lady I told you about, the one I saw on the observation deck? Mia nodded. The sad one. Yes, her name is Saris. She is well. She is the princess. Mia's eyes went wide. But she did not interrupt. She waited for the data. She is in trouble, Gabe continued, choosing his words with the care of a bomb disposal technician. Her family wants to force her to do something she does not want to do. They want to take away her choices. She needs help to stay free. And the only way she can stay free is if she has a family of her own. A family that is not part of their rules. Mia tilted her head. So she needs us. She needs a husband, Gabe corrected gently. On paper, a contract. Like when I signed for a heavy crate. But for a life. If I agree to marry her for 1 year, she stays free. And in return, she is going to make sure we never have to worry about rent, or food, or the cold ever again. Mia was silent for a long time. Her mind was working, processing the transaction. Is she nice? Mia asked. I think so, Gabe said. She is desperate. Desperate people are hard to judge. But she did not look down on me. Does she have a home? She does. We would have to move there, up to the diplomatic sector. Mia looked around their tiny, rusted box of a home. She looked at the stain on the ceiling that looked like a nebula and the patch on the wall where the heat shielding was peeling. Then she looked at Gabe. Does she look at the stars the way you do? Papa. Gabe froze. What do you mean? You know, Mia said, gesturing vaguely. Like you are looking for something you lost. Like you are sad. But you do not want anyone to fix it because the sadness is the only thing you have left of Mom. The air left Gabe's lungs. He had thought he was hiding it so well. He thought he was the stoic mountain, the unshakable rock. But his 10-year-old daughter had seen right through the armor. Yeah, Gabe whispered, his voice cracking. Yeah, star stuff. She looks exactly like that. Mia nodded decisively. She slid off the chair and walked over to her small pile of belongings, a few books, her data pad, and a stuffed robotic bear with one missing eye. Then we have to help her, Mia said simply. If she is trapped in a box like us, we have to help her get out. Mom would want us to. Gabe closed his eyes. The moral clarity of a child was a terrifying weapon. It cut through all his hesitation, all his strategic doubts, and left only the raw obligation of decency. Okay, Gabe said, standing up. Okay, pack your bear. We are moving out. The meeting took place 2 hours later. Not in a gilded hall, but right there in Unit 4B. It was a calculated move by Saris, or perhaps her lawyers, to sign the documents before anyone in the upper levels noticed what was happening. Saris arrived accompanied by a single Aurelian male. He was tall, thin as a reed, and dressed in robes of muted gray. He carried a briefcase that hovered on its own anti-grav field. Mr. Rylan, the lawyer said. His voice was dry, like rustling parchment. I am Magistrate Vax. I represent the personal legal interests of Princess Ceres Valor. I have prepared the Articles of Union. Gabe gestured to the wobbly table. Make yourself comfortable. Sorry about the chair. One of the legs is short. Sarah stood by the door. She was wearing a hooded cloak that hid her bioluminescence, but Gabe could see the tension in her jaw. She looked out of place in the grime of Sector 4, like a diamond dropped in a coal chute. Where is the child? Saris asked softly. Mia is a freshman, Gabe said. Giving us a minute, Vax tapped the briefcase, and a holographic document projected into the air, spinning slowly. It was dense with text, thousands of lines of legal code. The terms are as discussed, Vax droned. 1 standard year of union. Full cohabitation required to satisfy the Oracle's proximity sensors. Public appearances as mandated by the Crown. In exchange, a transfer of 10 million credits has been placed in a secure escrow, released to you in monthly installments, with the bulk sum available upon completion of the term. Gabe skimmed the text. It read less like a marriage license and more like a ceasefire treaty. Clause 4A. The consort shall not impede the political duties of the principal. Clause 9B, genetic material, shall not be exchanged. It is very romantic, Gabe muttered. It is precise, Vax corrected. There is also a clause regarding the child, Mia Rylan. She is granted ward status under the House of Valor. This affords her full educational privileges and Level 5 security clearance. However, she must not approach the Oracle interface devices without supervision. She is 10, Gabe said sharply. She is not going to hack your computer, God. Precaution is the mother of stability, Vax said. Gabe looked at Saris. She had pulled back her hood slightly. Her eyes were not glowing with the distress of the night before. They were dim, resigned. "Are you sure about this?" Gabe asked her. "Once I sign this, there is no undo button. You are tied to a crate pusher." "I am sure," Saris said. Her voice was steady. "It is the only variable Dravik cannot control. Please, Gabriel, sign." Gabe picked up the stylus. It felt heavy. He looked at the signature line, consort designate. He thought of the debt notification. He thought of the cold in Sector 9. He thought of Mia's face when she talked about her mother. He signed. The hologram flashed green. "Done," Vax said, closing the briefcase. "The funds for your debts have already been transmitted. The transport is waiting at the sector lift. We suggest you bring only personal items. Wardrobe and amenities will be provided." Gabe looked at his small duffel bag. It contained everything he owned in the world. "We are ready," Gabe said. The transition from the lower levels to the diplomatic sector was not just a change in location. It was a change in atmosphere. The air down below was thick, recycled so many times it tasted metallic. Up here, on the crown level, the air smelled of lavender and ozone-free oxygen. It was silent. No humming machinery. No shouting neighbors. No clanking of cargo. The apartment, if one could call a sprawling penthouse that occupied half a deck, an apartment was overwhelming. The walls were made of smart glass that could turn opaque or transparent at a command. The floor was a warm, organic composite that felt like polished wood but yielded slightly underfoot. Mia ran to the massive window. "Papa, look, you can see the whole nebula." Gabe stood beside her. The view was indeed spectacular. The Orion Nebula churned in violet and gold, no longer obscured by dirty glass. It felt close enough to touch. "It is big," Gabe said, feeling very small. "I hope it meets your requirements," Sarah said. She was standing in the center of the room, looking unsure of herself in her own home. She had removed her cloak, revealing a tunic of deep indigo. "There are 3 bedrooms. I have prepared the eastern suite for you and Mia. It has the best view of the star charts." "It is fine," Gabe said. "More than fine. It is bigger than the entire block we lived in." He walked over to a wall panel that looked like a control interface. "So, how do I turn on the lights in the hallway? It is a bit dim." "It is gesture-controlled," Saris explained. "Simply wave your hand in an upward arc to simulate the rising sun." Gabe frowned. He waved his hand up. Nothing happened. He waved it again, more vigorously. "Like this," he chopped his hand through the air. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. A split second later, the sound of screeching avians filled the air. Holographic vines erupted from the ceiling, and the temperature spiked to 30 degrees Celsius. A synthetic rain began to mist from hidden vents. "Alert," a computer voice chimed. "Tropical immersion mode activated. Welcome to the jungle of Zarthos," Mia squealed, half in delight, half in shock. "Turn it off," Gabe shouted over the sound of a roaring jaguar. "I just wanted a light bulb." Saris stepped forward, a look of mild horror on her face. She made a graceful, sweeping motion with both hands, like she was parting water. The jungle vanished. The lights returned to a soft, neutral amber. The rain stopped. Gabe stood there, dripping wet, water dripping from his nose. Sarah started, and then she stopped. Her lips twitched. The bioluminescence on her wrists flared a bright, cheerful pink. She was suppressing a laugh. "That," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly, "was the relaxation protocol. Though I admit, your technique was somewhat aggressive." Gabe wiped his face. "I am a simple man, princess. I like switches. Click on, click off. No jaguars." Mia burst out laughing. It was a full, belly laugh that echoed in the large room. And after a moment, Sarah smiled. It was a tentative thing, fragile, but it was real. I will have the interface adjusted to manual inputs, Sarah said. For your safety. Appreciate it, Gabe grumbled. Though he wasn't truly angry. He saw the way Mia was looking at Saris with awe, but also with comfort. The ice had been broken, shattered by a holographic monkey. The next few days settled into a strange, tenuous rhythm. The penthouse became a microcosm of two worlds colliding. Saris spent her mornings handling diplomatic correspondence, her fingers dancing over holographic keyboards. Gabe spent his time pacing the perimeter, checking security protocols, and trying to figure out what to do with hands that were used to lifting heavy crates. But the bridge between them was Mia. Mia was fearless. She treated Saris not as a royal figurehead, but as a source of infinite data. "Why do your wrists glow?" Mia asked one evening over dinner. They were eating a dish of Aurelian origin, some kind of blue tubers and synthetic chicken that Gabe had insisted on cooking to prove he contributed something. "It is a biological feedback," Saris explained, rolling up her sleeve. "We Aurelians communicate emotion through light as much as sound. When I am calm, it pulses slowly. When I am afraid, it flashes." "Like a mood ring," Mia said, "but built in." "Oh, what?" Saris asked. "Old human thing," Gabe interjected. "Cheap jewelry that changed color with body heat. Suppose you tell you if your girlfriend was mad at you." Saris looked at her wrist. "Efficient. My people cannot lie about what we feel. It makes politics complicated." "Teach me," Mia said. "Not the glowing part, the language, the sounds you make." Saris hesitated. "High Aurelian is difficult for human vocal cords. It requires resonance." "I can try," Mia insisted, so Saris began to teach her. They sat on the floor of the living room, the princess and the pauper's daughter. Saris would make a melodic, humming sound, and Mia would scrunch up her face trying to imitate it. "Kailos," Saris intoned. "It means star path." "Kailos," Mia squeaked. "Close," Saris encouraged. More from the chest. Gabe watched from the kitchen island, a mug of coffee in his hand. He watched the way Saris leaned in, her posture losing that rigid, royal stiffness. He saw the way she patiently corrected Mia's pronunciation, her hand resting gently on the girl's shoulder. For a woman who claimed to be terrified of being a genetic tool, she had a natural maternal instinct. But Gabe also saw the shadow that lingered in Saris's eyes when she thought no one was looking. He saw the way she checked the time, counting down the days. He wasn't just a husband on paper. He was a bodyguard for a woman waiting for an execution. The peace, predictably, did not last. It was broken on the fifth day by a chime that resonated through the entire apartment. The main communication wall lit up with the seal of the Dominion, a golden spiral wrapped around a seeing eye. "Incoming transmission," the House AI announced. Priority Alpha. Origin Imperial Palace. Aurelia Prime." The series went rigid. The color drained from her skin, leaving her a pale, ash-gray violet. Her wrists began to flash that erratic, staccato rhythm Gabe remembered from the observation deck. "It is them," she whispered. Gabe stepped forward. He instinctively placed himself between the screen and Saris, a habit born of a dozen combat zones. "Mia, go to your room." "But, now, Mia," Gabe said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Mia grabbed her bear and ran. "Answer it," Gabe said to the air. "Let us see the in-laws." The wall dissolved into a high-definition hologram. Two figures appeared, standing in a hall that looked like it was grown from crystal and light. The first was an older Aurelian, seated on a throne of woven metal. He wore heavy, ceremonial robes, and his face was a map of deep lines and weary authority. This was Imperator Kaelor Valor. Standing beside him was a man who made the hairs on the back of Gabe's neck stand up. He was younger, sleek, with oil-black hair and eyes that were too bright, too focused. He wore a high-collared uniform that screamed military precision disguised as bureaucracy. Regent Malen Dravik. Daughter, the Imperator spoke. His voice was deep, echoing. We have received the legal filings. Father, Sarah said, bowing her head slightly. She stepped out from behind Gabe, regaining a shred of her composure. I trust the paperwork is in order. The paperwork is creative, Dravik interjected. His voice was smooth, like velvet over broken glass. He looked at Gabe, his eyes scanning him, as if he were a bug on a slide. And this must be the husband. Gabriel Rylan, Gabe said, crossing his arms. Nice to meet you. You must be the guy trying to sell my wife. Saris inhaled sharply. The Imperator blinked. Dravik merely smiled. A cold, thin expression. A laborer with a tongue, Dravik noted. How charmingly rustic. You must forgive our surprise, Mr. Rylan. We expected the princess to choose someone of substance. I am solid enough, Gabe said. This union is irregular, Imperator Kalor said, his voice heavy with fatigue. The Oracle grid has analyzed the compatibility. The probability of stability is less than 4%. It predicts cultural friction, biological incompatibility, and ultimate dissolution. The Oracle predicts what it is fed, Sarah said, her voice trembling but audible. And under the Treaty of Eros, my choice is protected. Gabriel is a citizen of the Alliance. He is not subject to the grid's mandates. Dravik took a step forward, looming in the hologram. Legal loopholes are fragile shields. Princess, the Dominion values order. Your marriage has caused a disturbance in the social metrics. The people are confused. The nobility is insulted. The people are curious, Saris countered. And the nobility is jealous. Enough, the Imperator raised a hand. We are not here to debate law. We are here to issue a summons. A summons? Saris asked. The Grand Conclave convenes in 20 days, Dravik said. The Council of High Houses will gather to discuss the future of the lineage. You will present yourself and your consort for evaluation. Evaluation? Gabe asked. What is this? A dog show? A validity assessment, Dravik said, his eyes locking onto Gabe's. If the Conclave determines that this marriage is a sham, a fraudulent attempt to bypass the imperial decree, then the contract will be annulled. The princess will be remanded to the Oracle Temple for immediate integration. And you, Mr. Rylan, along with your offspring, will be deported, or worse, if you are found to be complicit in treason. Treason, Gabe laughed, a short, harsh bark. Marrying a girl is treason now. Disrupting the future of the Empire is treason, Dravik said softly. Make no mistake, human. You have walked into a machine that grinds worlds to dust. Do not think your obscurity will protect you. The transmission cut. The wall went black. The silence that followed was deafening. Tell me about the grid, Gabe said. He was standing by the window, staring out at the nebula. It didn't look beautiful anymore. It looked like a storm cloud. Saris was sitting on the sofa, her head in her hands. She looked defeated. It is not a god, Saris said quietly. Humans always think it is a religion. It is not. It is a prediction engine, a quantum computer the size of a city, buried deep within Aurelia Prime. She looked up. It records history, every crop yield, every war, every birth, every death for 3,000 years. It uses that data to predict the future. It tells us where to plant, when to trade, who to marry. It optimizes us. Sounds convenient, Gabe said. No one has to think. Exactly, Sarah said. We surrendered our intuition for safety. But the grid is only as good as the data it is fed. For centuries, it was objective. But Dravik is regent. He controls the input filters. He has been feeding it biased data. He tells the grid that imperial stability requires the consolidation of power in his faction. So the grid predicts that I must marry his ally. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. He uses the machine to justify his ambition, and calls it the will of history. Gabe turned from the window. So the system is rigged. Completely, Sarah said. And now I have dragged you and Mia into the gears. She stood up, walking toward him. You should leave. Take the money. Run. I will tell them I coerced you. I will take the blame. Gabe looked at her. He saw the genuine fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for him and his daughter. Dravik threatened Mia, Gabe said. His voice was very low, very calm. It was the voice he used right before he breached a door. He did, Saris admitted. That was his mistake, Gabe said. He walked past her, toward the master bedroom where his few belongings were stored. Where are you going? Saris asked, panic rising in her voice. I am not running, Gabe said. I spent 10 years running. I hid in the docks. I hid in the dirt. I let people call me a nobody because I thought it kept us safe. But safety is a lie. You said it yourself, Dravik wants total control. If I run now, he comes after us anyway, just to tie up loose ends. He reached the bedroom and kneeled before the heavy, reinforced trunk at the foot of his bed. He placed his hand on the biometric lock. It recognized his palm print, instantly. User verified Commander Rylan. Welcome back. The lid hissed open. Inside, resting on dark foam, was armor. It was not the shiny, ceremonial gold of the Aurelian Guard. It was matte black, scarred, pitted, and ugly. It was human heavy infantry shock armor, the kind designed to walk through walls. Beside it lay a kinetic pulse rifle and a tactical visor that had seen the fires of the Eros Gate. Saris stood in the doorway, her hands covering her mouth. You, she breathed. You are not just a laborer. Gabe picked up the helmet. He looked at the reflection in the visor. He didn't see the tired dad anymore. He saw the ghost of Eros. We are going to Aurelia Prime, Gabe said. He didn't put the armor on. Not yet. He just let his hand rest on the cold metal, grounding himself. But the Conclave, Saris stammered. They will tear us apart. Let them try, Gabe said. He stood up and turned to face her. Dravik wants to evaluate us. Fine. Let's show him what happens when you corner a parent. He looked at Saris, and for the first time, he offered her a smile that wasn't forced. It was grim, sharp, and dangerous. You hired a husband, princess, but you got a soldier. I hope that is okay with you. Saris looked at him, her wrists pulsing a slow, steady, brilliant violet. It is more than okay, she whispered. It is optimal. Gabe closed the trunk. The seal locked with a heavy thud that sounded like a gavel falling. Get Mia, Gabe said. Tell her we are going on a field trip, and tell her to pack her nice clothes. We have an empire to annoy. The royal transport vessel, Starlight's Grace, was less a ship and more a moving cathedral. It glided through the slipstream with a silence that unnerved Gabriel Rylan, who was used to ships that groaned, rattled, and smelled of burning coolant. Gabe stood in the private quarters, adjusting the collar of the formal tunic Saris had provided. It was deep blue, woven with a fabric that shifted color when he moved, and it felt ridiculously tight across his shoulders. He felt like a bear squeezed into a silk purse. Stop fidgeting, Saris said softly. She was standing by the mirror, staring at her own reflection. She wore a gown of liquid silver that seemed to flow over her skin like water. Intricate, bioluminescent patterns woven directly into the thread. But her hands were shaking. I am not fidgeting, Gabe lied. I am checking the tactical flexibility of the fabric, in case I need to punch someone. Please do not punch anyone, Saris said, turning to face him. Especially not the high priest. He bites. Noted, Gabe said. He walked over to her, up close. He could see the strain in her eyes. The violet of her irises was clouded, her pupils dilated with anxiety. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking through him, at the political meat grinder awaiting them. This, she gestured to her elaborate headdress, a heavy, crystalline structure that pulsed with faint light. It feels like a target. It is armor, Gabe said. He reached out, his rough hands hovering for a moment before gently adjusting the clasp of the headdress that was digging into her neck. Just a different kind. You wear it to show them you are not afraid, to show them you belong on that throne more than they do. Saris looked up at him, surprised by the gentleness of his touch. Is that what you tell yourself when you wear your armor? No, Gabe said, his hands lingering for a second too long on her shoulder. I tell myself that if I survive, I am going to eat a very large steak. A small, genuine smile broke through her tension. You are impossible, Gabriel. I am practical, he corrected. Now, breathe. You are the princess. You outrank everyone in that room except your dad. Act like it. Papa, look. Mia's voice pulled them apart. She was pressed against the panoramic window, her nose squashed against the glass. Gabe moved to stand beside his daughter, below them. Aurelia Prime was coming into view. It was not a planet of soil and rock. It was a world of light. The cities were not built on the ground but suspended in the massive, biocrystalline trees that covered the surface. Spires of gold and glass spiraled upward, connected by bridges of pure energy. The clouds were a soft, bruised purple, glowing from within. It is shiny, Mia whispered in awe. It is, Gabe agreed, his eyes narrowing. Shiny things usually have sharp edges. Star stuff. Stay close to me. Welcome to Aurelia Prime, Sarah said, her voice hollow. The city of eternal light and eternal judgment. The landing platform at the Grand Conclave Hall was a chaotic sea of colors and noise. As the ramp lowered, Gabe was hit by a wall of sound, thousands of voices chanting, shouting, and whispering. He stepped out first, his hand instinctively dropping to his hip where his sidearm would usually be. It wasn't there. Weapons were forbidden in the conclave. He felt naked. Mia held his left hand, her grip tight enough to turn her knuckles white. Saris took his right arm, her touch cool and firm. Head up, Gabe murmured to both of them. Walk like you own the pavement. They descended into the crowd. The air smelled of ozone and exotic perfumes that made Gabe's nose itch. On either side, Aurelian citizens pressed against the energy barriers. Some cheered for the princess, waving banners of royal violet. But many others stared in stony silence, their eyes fixed on Gabe. Human, a voice hissed from the crowd. Defiler. Mongrel, another spat. Gabe ignored them. His eyes were scanning the upper balconies, the shadows between the pillars, the sight lines, sniper check, exit check, choke points. The old habits of a commander overrode the anxiety of the dad. They hate us, Mia whispered, shrinking closer to his leg. They do not know us, Sarah said, her voice projecting slightly, loud enough for those nearby to hear. They fear change, little one, and we are the biggest change they have seen in 1,000 years. They reached the massive doors of the Grand Conclave. 2 guards, towering figures in gold armor, with halberds that crackled with energy, crossed their weapons. Identity, the guard on the left rumbled. Princess Saris Valor, Sarah said, her chin raised. And her family. The guard hesitated. He looked at Gabe, then at the small human child clutching a stuffed robot bear. Enter, the guard said, stepping aside. The Imperator waits. The Great Hall was a cavernous space, large enough to house a destroyer-class starship. The ceiling was a dome of transparent crystal, magnifying the light of the 3 moons overhead. In the center of the room sat the golden throne, flanked by the Council of 12, the heads of the noble houses, and behind the throne, humming with a sound that vibrated in Gabe's teeth, was the interface, a massive column of blue light, swirling with data streams, the Oracle Grid's physical manifestation. Imperator Kalor sat on the throne, looking smaller than he had in the hologram. He looked tired. Beside him, standing with the predatory stillness of a viper, was Regent Malin Dravik. "Princess Saris Valor," the herald announced, his voice booming. "Consort Gabriel Rylan, Ward Mia Rylan." The silence that fell over the hall was absolute. Every eye, hundreds of them, glowing with judgment fixed on the trio walking down the central aisle. Gabe felt the weight of it. This wasn't a court. It was an arena. They stopped at the designated circle of judgment, 10 meters from the throne. "Father," Saris said, bowing deeply. "Imperator," Gabe said, offering a curt nod. He didn't bow. He was a citizen of the Alliance. He bowed to no king. A ripple of murmurs went through the nobility. "Insolence," Dravik said smoothly, his voice amplified by the room's acoustics. "The human does not know respect." "I respect the man," Gabe said, his voice carrying clearly without amplification. "I do not worship the chair," Dravik smiled, a thin, dangerous expression. "Let us see if your defiance holds up to scrutiny. Mr. Rylan, we are here to determine the validity of this union. The Oracle suggests it is a fabrication, a tactical maneuver to avoid the princess's duty." Dravik stepped down from the dais, pacing around them like a shark circling bait. "Tell me, human, what is the favorite flower of the princess?" "She does not like flowers," Gabe said instantly. "She likes nebulas, and she hates the smell of synthetic lavender because it reminds her of the cleaning fluid used in the royal nursery." Saris looked at him, surprised. He had remembered a throwaway comment she made 3 days ago. Dravik paused, annoyed. "Trivialities. Let us discuss culture. Can you recite the lineage of the first flame? Can you speak High Aurelian?" "No," Gabe said. "But I can tell you that she hums when she is nervous. I can tell you she checks the exits in every room she enters, just like I do. And I can tell you that she is terrified of that blue light behind you because she thinks it eats souls." "Superstition," Dravik scoffed. "The mark of a primitive mind." He stopped in front of Gabe, invading his personal space. "Why her? Why a princess? Did you see a payout? A ticket out of the gutter?" Gabe felt Mia tremble against his leg. He looked Dravik in the eye. "I saw a woman crying in the dark," Gabe said. "And nobody else stopped. You talk about duty, about nobility. But you let your own princess weep alone because it was not politically convenient to notice. Where I come from, we do not leave people behind. That is why." "Sentimental drivel," Dravik sneered. "You signed a contract, a business arrangement." "I did," Gabe admitted. "It started as a contract. I needed money. She needed a shield. I am not going to lie to you people. I do not do politics." He looked up at the Imperator. "But in the last 20 days, I have learned something. I do not view any person, not a dock worker, not a soldier, and definitely not a princess, as a commodity. She is not a node for your computer. She is a person, and as long as I am standing, she stays that way." "Brave words," Dravik said, turning his back on them. "But the Oracle deals in facts, not feelings. Oracle, initiate projection." The blue column of light flared. A holographic projection filled the center of the hall. It showed a simulated future. It showed Saris and Gabe married. It showed riots in the streets. It showed the Aurelian economy collapsing. It showed war with the human alliance. "Behold," Dravik declared, "the path of chaos. The grid predicts a 99% probability of catastrophe if this union stands." The crowd gasped. The nobles whispered fearfully. Saris stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the projection. "No, that is wrong." "The Oracle does not err," Dravik snapped. "The Oracle recounts history," Saris said, her voice rising. "It does not invent it. Look at the date stamp on that riot simulation. It is based on the Garland Uprising of 3 centuries ago. You are recycling old trauma data to create a false prediction. She is delusional, Dravik shouted. Guardians restrain her. Wait! The Imperator stood up. Let her speak. The data is corrupted. Saris pointed at the column. I can feel it. The harmonic resonance is off. Dravik has been feeding it fear scenarios to force the Council's hand. Dravik's face twisted. The mask of civility slipped. The Oracle protects the Empire, he roared. And I protect the Oracle sees them. They are a threat to the stability of the Dominion. Suddenly, the gold-armored guards surrounding the circle leveled their halberds. But they weren't aiming at Saris. They were aiming at Gabe and Mia. Protocol 0, Dravik commanded. Eliminate the variables. Papa, Mia screamed. Time slowed down for Gabe. He saw the guard's fingers tightening on the triggers. He saw the energy building in the halberds. He didn't think so. He reacted. Down, Gabe shouted, shoving Mia and Saris to the floor. He grabbed the nearest heavy object, a ceremonial brass pedestal holding a vase of flowers, and hurled it. It smashed into the nearest guard's helmet with a sickening crunch. The guard went down, his weapon firing wild, scorching the ceiling. Scatter, Gabe yelled. Get behind the pillars! Chaos erupted. The nobles screamed and fled. The energy barriers slammed down, sealing the exits. Kill them, Dravik was screaming. It is an assassination attempt the human is attacking. 5 guards advanced, energy bolts flying. Gabe slid behind a marble column, dragging Mia and Saris with him. He had no armor, no gun, just a terrified child and a princess in a dress. Saris, Gabe barked, his voice changing. The dad was gone. The commander was here. Can you access the grid from here? Direct access is only from the throne, Saris stammered, clutching Mia. Then we are going to the throne, Gabe said. Are you crazy? Saris cried. There are 12 guards between us and my father. Gabe looked around. He saw the layout of the hall, the reflective crystal floor, the hanging tapestries, the gravity generators on the upper balcony. Mia, Gabe said, gripping her shoulders. Listen to me. You are going to stay low. You are going to count to 20. Can you do that? Yes, Mia sobbed, hugging her bear. Good girl. Gabe looked at Saris. When I move, you run for the interface. Do not stop. Do not look back. What are you going to do? I am going to void their warranty, Gabe said. He grabbed a heavy velvet tapestry hanging from the pillar and ripped it down. Hey, Shiny! Gabe roared, stepping out into the open. The guards turned. Gabe threw the tapestry over the heads of the lead 2 guards, while they struggled, blinded. He swept the legs of the 3rd guard, grabbed his energy halberd, and reversed the grip. He didn't fire. He used the butt of the weapon to smash the knee of the 4th guard. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was the fighting style of a man who had cleared trenches with a shovel. Go, Gabe shouted. Saris scrambled toward the throne. Stop her, Dravik yelled, pulling a pistol from his robes. He aimed at Saris. Gabe saw it. He was too far away to reach her. He threw the halberd. It wasn't an elegant throw. It was a Hail Mary. The heavy weapon spun through the air and smashed into the console beside Dravik, exploding in a shower of sparks. Dravik flinched, his shot going wide. Gabe didn't stop. He charged the dais, tackling the remaining 2 guards with the force of a runaway freight train. He took a plasma graze to the shoulder, a searing line of fire, but he didn't slow down. He punched one guard in the throat piece and head-butted the other. He stood before the throne, chest heaving, blood dripping from his shoulder onto the pristine floor. Saris reached the interface. She didn't use a keyboard. She slammed her hands directly onto the column of light. Her bioluminescence flared blindingly white. Her eyes went completely blank. Interface connected. Subject Valor. Saris. Show them, Saris screamed, her voice distorting as it merged with the machine. Show them the truth. The blue column pulsed violently. The hologram of the riot vanished. In its place, a new stream of data appeared. It was a log of manual edits. User Regent Dravik. Action modify historical parameter, 449. Action insert, fear bias. Action suppress, Treaty of Eros. The text scrolled faster and faster. Thousands of edits. Thousands of lies. The hall fell silent. Even the guards lowered their weapons. Imperator Kalor stood up, his face a mask of fury. He looked at the screen, then at Dravik. You tampered with the sacred history, Kalor whispered. You made the oracle a liar. Dravik looked around, his face pale. I did it for the Empire. The grid was stagnating. We needed direction. You needed power, Gabe rasped, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Dravik snarled. He raised his pistol again, aiming not at Saris, but at Gabe. Die, human scum! But before he could pull the trigger, a small, shimmering barrier appeared in front of Gabe. Mia was standing there, holding a small device she had pulled from her backpack, a portable shield generator Gabe had tinkered with back on the station. Leave my dad alone, Mia shouted. The energy bolt hit the shield and dissipated. The distraction was enough. The Imperator raised his hand. Guards, Kalor commanded. Arrest the traitor. The guards hesitated for a fraction of a second, then turned on Dravik. He was pinned to the floor in seconds. The adrenaline crashed out of Gabe. He stumbled, his vision graying at the edges. The plasma burn was deep. He felt strong arms catch him. It was Saris. She had pulled away from the interface, her light dimming but steady. Gabriel. She eased him down onto the steps of the throne. I am okay, Gabe wheezed. Just scorch the paint a little. Saris looked at his wound, her hands hovering over it. Her tears were falling again, glowing softly on his dark tunic. You charged a phalanx of the Imperial Guard, she said, her voice shaking. With a curtain and a stick. It was a very nice stick, Gabe grinned weakly. He looked up at her. The chaos of the battle had stripped away the pretense. There was no princess and pauper now, just a woman holding the man who had bled for her. You saved us, she whispered. Again. Contract obligation, Gabe mumbled, his eyes fluttering. No, Saris said fiercely. That was not in the contract. She leaned down, her forehead touching his. You are an idiot, Gabriel Rylan. And you are the bravest man I have ever known. Hey, Gabe whispered. I told you. I need that steak. You shall have it. The Imperator's voice came from above them. Kalor stood over them, looking down at the human bleeding on his royal dais. He looked at Mia, who was still holding her shield generator, standing guard over her father like a fierce little gargoyle. The conclave is suspended, Kalor announced. Regent Dravik is under investigation for high treason against the truth. He looked at Gabe. Get the healers, the Imperator ordered. Treat him, if he dies. I will have to answer to my daughter, and I do not think I can survive her wrath. As the medics swarmed in, Saris didn't let go of Gabe's hand. She looked at him, and for the first time, the look in her eyes wasn't fear, or calculation, or even gratitude. It belonged. Stay with me, human, she whispered. I am not going anywhere, Gabe promised, before the darkness finally took him. I have got a lease to finish. The healing gel on Gabriel Ryland's shoulder felt cold, a stark contrast to the humidity of the royal biosanctuary. It had been 3 days since the chaos at the Grand Conclave. 3 days since he had thrown a brass pedestal at a member of the Imperial Guard, and 3 days since he had become the most talked-about human in the Orion Arm. He stood on the terrace of the private estate, a sprawling structure of grown crystal and living wood suspended high in the canopy of Aurelia Prime. It was beautiful, undeniably so, The air smelled of jasmine and ozone, and the light from the triple moons filtered through the translucent leaves of massive, spiraling trees. But to Gabe, it was just a very expensive cage. He tapped his knuckles against the railing. It vibrated with a faint energy field. Perimeter shielding. They were technically guests of the Imperator, waiting for the initial investigation into Regent Dravik to conclude. But Gabe knew a holding cell when he saw one. "You are pacing again," a voice called out from the shadows of the garden. Saris stepped into the light. She wore a simple robe of white silk, devoid of the heavy ceremonial armor or the stiff diplomatic tunics. Her hair was loose, cascading down her back like a waterfall of silver. The bioluminescence on her wrists was a soft, steady lavender, the color of exhaustion, but also of peace. "I am not pacing," Gabe said, stopping mid-step. "I am patrolling. There is a difference." "There are 50 royal guards outside the perimeter." "Gabriel," Saris said, walking over to stand beside him. "And the estate is suspended 2,000 meters above the ground. Unless an assassin has wings, we are safe." "Dravik has jump jets," Gabe grumbled, though he finally leaned against the railing, taking the weight off his injured side. "How is Mia?" "She is in the aquatic garden." Saris smiled, and the light on her wrists brightened slightly. "She discovered the levitating koi fish. I believe she is currently trying to teach them to jump through a hoop made of her arms." Gabe let out a short breath that was almost a laugh. "That kid. Give her a week, and she will have them organized into a strike team." "She is resilient," Saris said softly. "Like her father." She looked at him, her gaze lingering on the bandage visible at the neckline of his shirt. "Does it hurt?" "Only when I laugh," Gabe said. "Which, given our current situation, is not a problem." He turned to face the city beyond the trees. Aurelia Prime was glowing, a sea of bioluminescent architecture. But the atmosphere had changed. Even from here, Gabe could feel the tension. "Have you seen the feeds?" Gabe asked. Saris nodded slowly. "I have." The video of the fight in the Great Hall had gone viral, not just in the Dominion, but across the Alliance territories. The image of a human laborer shielding an alien princess and a child, wielding a velvet curtain and a halberd against armored elites, had captured the galactic imagination. "They are calling you the Shield of the Throne," Saris said. "A segment of the populace, mostly the lower castes, and the unaligned are celebrating. They see it as proof that the Oracle is not infallible. If a human can defy the probability of death, then perhaps their own fates are not written in stone." "And the other half?" Gabe asked. "The other half wants you spacing," Saris admitted frankly. "The nobility views your presence as an infection, and Dravik even from his holding cell. His reach is long." Gabe tightened his grip on the railing. "I saw the new reports this morning. The ones on the encrypted channels." Saris stiffened. "Gabriel, you should not read those." "They are digging up my service record," Gabe said, his voice flat. "Or at least, the parts they can twist. They are not calling me a shield anymore. They are calling me the Butcher of Sector 7. He looked at his hands, rough, scarred, capable of terrible things. "They say I ordered an orbital strike on a civilian transport hub to stop an Aurelian advance," Gabe said. "They say I have no honor, that I am a rabid animal you brought into the palace." "I know it is a lie," Saris said fiercely. "I checked the logs myself, Gabriel. Real logs, not the ones Dravik tampered with. You refused that order. You held the line on the ground for 40 hours to let the civilians evacuate before the bombardment started. You lost half your platoon saving enemies." Gabe looked at her, surprised. "You checked." "I am a princess," Saris said, lifting her chin. "I do my research, and I know a man who saves children does not butcher them." She reached out, her cool hand covering his warm, calloused one. "Do not let them write your story, Gabriel. They fight with ink and lies. You fight with the truth. And heavy objects. Gabe looked at their joined hands. The contrast, her pale, glowing skin against his tanned, scarred flesh should have looked wrong. But under the moons of Aurelia, it looked strangely like a completed circuit. I just wanted to pay the rent, Gabe whispered, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. And I just wanted to avoid a wedding, Saris replied. It seems we both failed spectacularly. The days bled into a strange routine. It was a domestic existence lived in the eye of a hurricane. Mia was the glue that held their fragile dynamic together. She moved between the human and Aurelian worlds with the careless ease of a child who hadn't yet learned that boundaries existed. One evening, in the grand living area of the estate, a cultural exchange program of sorts was underway. No, Mia said, shaking her head. You are overthinking it. It is just rock, paper, and scissors. Rock smashes scissors. Scissors cut paper. Paper covers rock. Saris stared at her hand, which was formed into a delicate fist. I do not understand the tactical advantage of the paper. Surely a rock can simply tear through the paper. It is metaphorical, Gabe said from the sofa, where he was pretending to read a datapad while actually watching them. The paper represents bureaucracy. It suffocates everything, even rocks, Saris laughed, a bright, melodic sound that made the room feel warmer. Ah, that is a weapon I understand well. Okay, my turn, Saris said. She stood up and beckoned Mia. I will teach you the dance of the twin moons. It is a traditional greeting for the harvest. Saris moved with a fluid grace that was almost impossible for a human to replicate. Her limbs seemed to flow like liquid, her wrists pulsing in time with her movements. Mia tried to copy her, stumbling and giggling, looking like a clumsy duckling trying to follow a swan. Lift your arms higher, Saris instructed gently, guiding Mia's small hands. Imagine you are catching the starlight and pulling it down to the earth. Mia spun, tripped over her own feet, and fell into Saris. Instead of stiffening, Saris caught her effortlessly, swinging her around until Mia was shrieking with laughter. Gabe lowered his datapad. He watched them, the alien princess, and his human daughter clinging to each other in a heap of silk and laughter. A sharp pang of longing struck him in the chest, precise as a sniper's bullet. This felt real. It felt like a home. It felt like something he could wake up to every day for the rest of his life. And that was exactly why it terrified him. The contract was for 1 year, 365 standard days. They were barely a month in. Every laugh, every shared meal, every moment of connection was just borrowing time against a heartbreak that was contractually obligated to happen. He couldn't let Mia get used to this. He couldn't let himself get used to this. Because when the year was up, they would go back to being nobodies, and Saris would go back to being a ruler. Worlds didn't collide like this without someone getting crushed in the impact. Papa, come dance, Mia shouted, waving at him. I do not dance. Star stuff, Gabe said, his voice gruff. I possess 2 left feet. Come on, Gabriel, Saris teased, her eyes glowing a mischievous gold. I promise not to step on you. Much. Gabe shook his head, forcing himself to stay seated. Someone has to watch the perimeter. The light on Saris's wrists dimmed slightly. She saw the wall go back up behind his eyes. She didn't push him, but the gold faded to a soft, melancholy blue. The visitor arrived 2 nights later, under the cover of a magnetic storm that grounded most air traffic. There were no heralds, no guards, no fanfare. Just the chime of the door and a single figure standing in the rain. Imperator Kalor looked older than he had in the Great Hall. He wore a plain gray cloak, soaked through, and he looked less like the ruler of a dozen systems and more like a tired grandfather. May I come in? Kalor asked. Gabe opened the door wider, stepping aside. It is your house, Imperator. It is my daughter's house, Kalor corrected, stepping into the warmth. And, currently, it is your fortress. Saris entered the room, having sensed her father's arrival. She stopped, wary. Father, you travel without your guard. That is reckless. Dravik is in a suppression cell, Kalor said, unclasping his cloak. And half the nobility is currently too busy auditing their own data logs to plot assassination. I have a moment of peace. I wanted to use it to speak to my family. He gestured to the seating area. They sat. The atmosphere was heavy, loaded with unsaid things. The investigation is yielding disturbing results, Kalor began, accepting a cup of tea from a service drone. Dravik's manipulation of the Oracle grid was extensive. He did not just alter the marriage parameters. He suppressed economic reports, inflated threat assessments from the Alliance, and hid ecological warnings. He was building a reality where he was the only savior, Saris said bitterly. Yes, Kalor sighed. And in doing so, he has shaken the faith of the Dominion. The people are questioning the grid. For the first time in centuries, they are looking to the throne for answers, not the machine. He looked at Gabe. They are looking at you, Gabriel Rylan. You broke the narrative. I just wanted to keep my kids safe, Gabe said. Intention is irrelevant to history, Kalor said. Consequence is what matters. And the consequence is that you and Saris are now the symbols of a new path. A path without the Oracle's absolute control. The Imperator leaned forward, his gaze sharpening. I must offer you a choice. A real choice. Not one dictated by an algorithm. What kind of choice? Gabe asked. The contract, Kalor said. I have reviewed it. It is legally sound, if unorthodox, but we are at a crossroads. If you decide to dissolve this union after the year is up, Kalor said, looking at Saris, I will ensure Gabriel and Mia are compensated double the agreed amount. They will be given new identities and a quiet life in a sector of their choosing, far from Aurelian politics. Gabe felt his heart rate spike. Safety. Real. Guaranteed safety. And Saris? Gabe asked. Saris will return to the fold, Kalor said softly, to restore faith in the traditional ways. She will have to make a sacrifice. She will enter the Oracle Temple. Not as a node, Dravik's plan was monstrous, but as a high priestess. She will dedicate her life to purifying the grid. She will never marry. She will never leave the temple grounds. The series went pale. A nunnery, she whispered. You would trade my freedom for the stability of the church. It would quell the nobility, Kalor said. They would see it as penance for this chaotic interlude. And the other option, Gabe asked, his voice hard. The other option, Kalor said, is that you stay. You maintain the marriage, you make it real. You stand beside her not as a hired shield, but as a true consort. And if we do that, then you declare war on the old order, Kalor said simply. The nobility will fight you at every turn. The purists will try to kill you. The Oracle loyalists will sabotage you. You will live the rest of your lives with a target on your backs. But, he looked at his daughter, but you would be free to build a new future. Together, Kalor stood up. I do not need an answer tonight. The investigation will take another month. After that, I will permit you to return to Crown's Reach while the Council deliberates. Use that time. Decide what you want. Not what the contract says. What you want. He walked to the door, then paused. Then, he looked at Gabe. For what it is worth. Human. I have never seen her look at a royal guard the way she looks at you. Do not undervalue that data point. Then he was gone, vanishing back into the rain. The silence left in the wake of the Imperator's visit was suffocating. Gabe stood by the window, staring at the storm. His reflection stared back a tired man with graying temples. He gave us a way out, Gabe said quietly. He gave you a way out, Saris corrected. She was sitting on the sofa, her posture rigid. For me, it is a choice between a cage of gold or a cage of duty. Being a priestess isn't the worst fate, Gabe reasoned. though the words tasted like ash. You would be safe. You would be respected. I would be alone, Sarah said. You would have your people, Gabe said. And Mia and I are just complications. Look at us. Saris. I am a grunt. You are royalty. This. He gestured between them. This is a fairy tale, and fairy tales do not survive in the real world. Eventually, the dragon wins. Is that what you think I am? Sarah stood up, her voice trembling with anger. A complication. A fairy tale. I think Mia deserves to grow up without sniper teams watching her walk to school, Gabe shouted, spinning around. I think you deserve a husband who knows which fork to use at a state dinner, not one who instinctively checks under the table for explosives. I do not care about the forks, Saris shouted back, her wrists flashing a chaotic, angry crimson. I care about the man who stood in front of a plasma charge for me. I care about the man who makes my father the most stubborn being in the universe. Listen. It is temporary, Gabe insisted, driving the knife in to hurt them both, hoping it would cauterize the wound. It is a job, Saris, a well-paid job. Do not confuse adrenaline with love. Saris recoiled, as if he had slapped her. The crimson faded from her wrists, leaving them dark, devoid of light. Is that all it is to you? She whispered. Adrenaline. Gabe opened his mouth to say yes, to lie, to save her from a future of being tied to a broken soldier, but he couldn't get the word out. I am going to check on Mia, Gabe said hoarsely. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the dark. The tension held for 2 days. They spoke only when necessary, polite and cold. Mia noticed, her cheerfulness dampening, her eyes darting between them with worry. On the 3rd day, they received clearance to travel to the spaceport for the journey back to Crown's Reach. The Imperator kept his word. They were being sent back to the neutral ground of the station to wait out the political storm. As they were loading the transport skiff at the edge of the estate, a commotion broke out near the perimeter gate. A young Aurelian soldier, barely out of adolescence, had collapsed. He was thrashing on the ground, his biolights strobing wildly in a seizure of terror. His comrades were backing away, unsure what to do. It is a neural feedback loop, one guard shouted. His link to the grid is overloading. Stay back. Gabe didn't stay back. Before the Royal Guard could intervene, Gabe dropped his duffel bag and sprinted across the landing pad. Gabriel, wait! Saris cried out. Gabe ignored her. He reached the thrashing kid and dropped to his knees. He didn't try to restrain him. He didn't try to use tech. Hey! Gabe barked, his voice cutting through the panic. Look at me, eyes on me, soldier! The kid gasped, his eyes rolling back, seeing nothing but invisible horrors. The numbers they are screaming. The numbers are not real, Gabe said firmly. He grabbed the kid's hand, pressing his own rough palm against the frantic, flashing wrist. Feel that? That is a hand. That is real. The ground under your back is real. I am real. I cannot stop the noise. Yes, you can, Gabe said, his voice dropping to a low, rhythmic cadence. Breathe with me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Come on, do it. It was a technique Gabe had used 100 times in the mud of the border worlds, calming rookies who had seen too much. In, Gabe commanded. The kid sucked in a breath. Hold, the kid held it. Out, slowly, agonizingly. The strobing lights on the kid's skin began to slow. The terror in his eyes cleared, focusing on the grisly human face hovering above him. Commander, the kid whispered, confused. Just a guy, Gabe said softly. You are okay, son. You just got a little lost in the static. You are back now. Gabe helped the boy sit up, patting him on the shoulder. Drink some water. Keep your feet on the ground. You are good. He stood up and dusted off his knees. When he turned around, he saw Saris. She was standing by the skiff, watching him. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were shining with a wet, fierce intensity. She had seen him. She saw not the warrior who fought with a halberd, but the veteran who healed with a touch. She saw the man who ran toward pain when everyone else backed away. In that moment, the doubt in Saris's heart evaporated. The contract didn't matter. The politics didn't matter. The Imperator's ultimatum didn't matter. She loved him, and she realized, with a terrifying clarity, that he loved her too. He just didn't think he was worthy of it. The journey back to Crown's Reach was on a commercial liner, commandeered for their use, but still less opulent than the royal yacht. It was a long haul, 12 hours through the jump gates. The private cabin was quiet. The exhaustion of the last month finally caught up with them. Mia had fallen asleep across 2 seats, her head resting on Saris's lap. Saris had drifted off as well, her head lolling to the side, her breathing deep and even. Gabe sat on the opposite seat, watching them. He shifted, trying to find a comfortable position. Eventually, he moved to the seat next to Saris. He carefully lifted Mia's feet to make room and sat down, without waking. Saris shifted. Her head fell onto Gabe's shoulder. She sighed in her sleep, her hand seeking out his arm and holding it. Gabe froze. He could smell the jasmine scent of her hair. He could feel the warmth of Mia's foot against his thigh. They were a pile, a tangle of limbs and breathing, a family. Gabe closed his eyes. He let himself have this, just for a moment. He leaned his head against Saris's, resting his cheek against her silver hair. Only a few months left, he whispered into the silence of the cabin. Then you will be safe, I promise. It was a vow to the universe, a promise that he would do the right thing and leave, to save them from the war that staying would bring. But Saris wasn't asleep. She heard him. She heard the heartbreak in his voice. She heard the resignation. She didn't open her eyes. She didn't move. She kept her breathing steady, pretending to dream. But inside, her mind was racing. He thinks he is saving me by leaving, she realized. He thinks he is the danger. She tightened her grip on his arm. Just a fraction, imperceptible to anyone but herself. You foolish human, she thought. You think you can sign a contract, save my life, steal my heart, and then walk away. I am a princess of the Aurelian Dominion, and I do not let go of what is mine. The ship hummed as it entered the final jump toward Crown's Reach. The station awaited. The investigation awaited. The choice awaited. But the decision had already been made. Now, Saris just had to convince the stubborn, self-sacrificing idiot sleeping on her shoulder that he was wrong. She would break the contract, not to end it, but to rewrite it, permanently. The air recycler in the communal sector of Crown's Reach hummed with a rhythm that had become strangely comforting to Gabriel Rylan. It was no longer the grinding noise of a station on the brink of collapse, but the steady heartbeat of a place that was learning to breathe again. 3 months had passed since the incident at the Grand Conclave. 3 months of a strange, suspended reality. Gabe leaned against the back wall of the newly designated Cultural Exchange Center, formerly a defunct storage bay for hydroponic algae. He crossed his arms over his chest, his security uniform crisp and clean. He had insisted on working. He could not sit idle in the penthouse suite Saris had rented on the upper levels. He needed to be useful. At the front of the room, Princess Saris Valor stood before a holographic whiteboard. She was not wearing royal silks or ceremonial armor. She wore a simple beige tunic and trousers, her silver hair tied back in a practical ponytail. The concept of gravity in Aurelian philosophy is not just physical, Saris explained, her voice melodic and projecting clearly to the 20 children sitting cross-legged on the floor. It is also emotional. We believe that we are pulled toward the things that ground us: family, duty, truth. Like magnets, a boy in the front row asked. It was Leo, a kid from the lower decks who used to throw hydrospanners at the security drones. Precisely like magnets. Leo, Sarah smiled. The bioluminescence on her wrists pulsed a soft, approving warm yellow. But magnets can be pulled apart. True gravity cannot be broken, only ignored. Mia was sitting next to Leo, looking impossibly smug. She nudged him with her elbow. "That is my mom," Mia whispered loudly. "She is explaining physics using poetry. It is an Aurelian thing." Gabe felt a tightness in his throat. "My mom." Mia had started saying it a week ago. She did not ask for permission. She did not check the contract. She just threw the title out into the universe and dared anyone to correct her. Saris had frozen the first time she heard it, her lights flushing a brilliant, shocked violet, before settling into a deep, contented gold. Gabe was the only one who felt the dread curling in his gut. He checked the time on his wrist unit. 2 in the afternoon. The shift was almost over. Another day of playing house. Another day closer to the end. The peace on Crown's Reach was fragile. The station had become a spectacle. Tourists from the core worlds came to see the princess and the pauper. The local businesses were booming. But underneath the commerce, the political tectonic plates were grinding. A notification pinged on Gabe's datapad. It was a Priority 1 channel. Sender, the Emerald Throne. Gabe stiffened. He tapped the receiver in his ear. "Go ahead." Commander Rylan, the voice of Imperator Kalor, filtered through, sounding tinny and distant. Secure line. "I hear you, Imperator," Gabe said, stepping out of the classroom into the corridor. "Is it time?" "The investigation into Regent Dravik is concluded," Kalor said. "The tribunal has reviewed the Oracle's logs. The extent of the corruption is substantial. However, Dravik's faction is not going quietly. They are demanding a final resolution." "A resolution," Gabe repeated. "You mean a trial?" "I mean a second Grand Conclave," Kalor corrected. "To be held in 5 standard days. The Council will decide the fate of the Oracle Grid, the status of your marriage, and the future of the succession. And if they vote against us, then Saris is stripped of her title. I am likely deposed, and you will be arrested for crimes against the state," Kalor said calmly. "It is an all-or-nothing wager, Gabriel." "Understood," Gabe said. "We will be ready." He cut the connection, through the glass partition of the classroom. He saw Saris laughing at something Mia had drawn on the board. She looked happy. She looked free. Gabe knew what he had to do. He had to make sure she stayed that way, even if it meant breaking his own heart to do it. The transport ship Ethelgard was a military-grade cruiser sent by the Imperator to retrieve them. It was faster than the commercial liners, built for speed and intimidation. The quarters were Spartan, metal bulkheads, bolted-down furniture, the hum of high-yield engines. Gabe sat on the edge of his bunk, polishing his boots. It was a nervous habit he had never managed to shake. Saris entered the room. She was holding a small data chip in her hand. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "You have been quiet since we left the station," she said. "Just thinking about the landing protocols," Gabe lied. "Crowd control is going to be a nightmare." "You are lying," Saris said softly. "Your pulse rate is elevated. I can hear it." Gabe stopped polishing. He set the boot down. He looked at her. Really looked at her, memorizing the curve of her jaw, the way her eyes seemed to hold the nebula itself. "I think we should end it," Gabe said. The silence that followed was absolute. The hum of the engine seemed to vanish. Saris did not flinch. She did not cry. She just stood there, clutching the chip. "End it." "The contract," Gabe said, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Before we land, before the council votes, if we dissolve the marriage now, voluntarily, you go into the conclave with a clean slate. You can negotiate from a position of strength. You can save the Oracle. You can reform the Empire from the inside." "And you?" Saris asked, her voice dangerously calm. "I take the payout," Gabe said. "I take Mia. We disappear. Go to the outer rim. The Imperator promised protection. It is the tactical play. Saris. It minimizes casualties. The tactical play, Saris repeated. She walked closer to him. Is that what this has been to you, a mission, an objective to be secured? It started that way, Gabe said. And it needs to end that way. You are a queen, Saris. I am a grunt with a bad knee and a record. I am dragging you down. The nobles will never accept me. They will use me to tear you apart. So you are protecting me, she said, by leaving me. I am saving you, Gabe insisted, standing up. Because he stopped. He couldn't say it. Because you what? Saris stepped into his space. She was glowing now, a fierce, burning white light radiating from her skin. Because you love me, or because you think you are not worth saving, Gabe turned away. It does not matter. The contract is the only thing that matters. The contract, Saris said. She held up the data chip. This contains the Articles of Union, the binding agreement. 1 year, 10 million credits. No emotion, no genetic exchange. She looked at the chip, then looked at Gabe. Do you know why I approached you that day on the observation deck? Saris asked. Because I was there, Gabe said. Because I was the only idiot who stopped. No, Saris said. That is what I told you. That is what I told myself I needed to say. But it is not the truth. She pressed a button on the wall panel, activating the room's holographic projector. She inserted the chip. But instead of the legal document, a video file began to play. It was grainy, shaky footage, historical archives. The timestamp was read 15 years ago. Location, the Arrows Gate. Gabe froze. His blood ran cold. The Arrows Gate was a massacre, a border skirmish that turned into a slaughter when Aurelian refugees were caught in the crossfire between Alliance forces and Dominion separatists. The video showed a burning city. It showed an Alliance heavy infantry unit holding a bridge. They were taking heavy fire. A voice crackled over the comms. Command to Unit 4. Pull back. Orbital bombardment is authorized in T-10 minutes. Repeat. Pull back. Then, a different voice. A human voice. Younger, angrier, negative. Command. We have civilians on the bridge. Aurelian non-combatants. Women and children. We are not moving. Unit 4. You are disobeying a direct order. You will be court-martialed. Then court-martial my corpse, the voice snarled. Rylan out. The video showed the soldier Gabe, 15 years younger, his armor battered standing in the middle of the bridge. He was firing a suppression cannon, drawing the enemy fire away from a group of terrified Aurelians huddled behind a transport truck. Among the refugees was a tall Aurelian woman, clutching a small child. The child was crying, her wrists flashing with the chaotic, terrified light of a panic attack. The soldier turned. He saw the child. He dropped his heavy weapon, sprinted across the open ground under plasma fire, and deployed a shield generator over them. He took a hit to the backplate, stumbled, but kept the shield up. He looked at the child, even through the helmet. You could hear his voice over the external speakers. Eyes on me. Kid. Breathe. I am not going to let them hurt you. Breathe. The video was cut to black. Gabe stared at the empty air. His hands were shaking. He hadn't seen that footage in a decade. He had buried it. He had been discharged for insubordination, stripped of rank, and told to disappear. I was 6 years old, Saris whispered. Gabe turned to look at her. The girl, Gabe rasped. The one with the mother. My nursemaid, Saris corrected. My mother had died years prior. I was being smuggled out of the war zone to meet my father. We were trapped on the bridge. She stepped closer, tears streaming down her face, glowing like starlight. I remembered the armor, Saris said. I remembered the voice. Eyes on me. Kid. Breathe. You knew, Gabe said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. On the station. You knew who I was. I have known for 5 years, Saris admitted. When the threat of arranged marriage began, I started looking for a way out. I started looking for the one human who had proven that he would defy an empire to save a stranger. She reached out and took his hand. I tracked you to Crown's Reach. I knew your shift schedule. I knew you went to the observation deck when you couldn't sleep. I sat there that night hoping, praying to every star in the sky, that you were still the same man, that you would stop. And if I had walked past, Gabe asked hoarsely. Then I would have jumped, Saris said simply. Because if the hero of Eros Gate had lost his heart, then there was no hope left in the universe for me. She squeezed his hand. I did not choose a random husband, Gabriel. I chose the man who gave me my life. I have loved you since I was 6 years old, even before I knew what the word meant. I just needed you to see me again. Gabe fell to his knees. The weight of it, the years of guilt, the feeling of being a failure, a nobody crumbled under the weight of her confession. He wasn't a random variable. He wasn't a mistake. He was the architect of his own destiny, and he hadn't even known it. I thought I was just a crate pusher, Gabe whispered. You are the shield, Saris said, kneeling with him. She took the data chip from the projector. And I do not need a contract to keep you. She closed her hand over the chip. With a sharp crack, she crushed it. The plastic shards fell to the floor. No more deadlines, Saris said. No more exits. You are mine, Gabriel Rylan, and I am yours. Unless you want to run. Gabe looked at the woman who had crossed time and war to find him. He looked at the shards of the contract. He stood up, pulling her with him. He kissed her. It wasn't the tentative, polite kiss of a consort. It was the kiss of a husband coming home from war. No running, Gabe said against her lips. Let us go tell your dad he is stuck with me. The second Grand Conclave was different. The fear was gone, replaced by a tense, electric anticipation. The great hall was packed. The 12 houses were there in full regalia. But the galleries were also filled with commoners, allowed in by Imperator Kalor's decree. Humans, Aurelians, and hybrids stood shoulder to shoulder. Dravik stood in the center of the judgment circle, stripped of his rank, wearing the gray robes of a penitent. He glared at them as they entered, but his teeth were pulled. Imperator Kalor stood on the dais. He did not sit. Citizens of the Dominion, Kalor's voice boomed. We gather to correct the path of history. He pointed to the oracle grid. The blue column was dim, dormant. For too long, we have let a machine dictate our humanity. We allowed it to become a crutch, and then a weapon. Regent Dravik used it to sell you fear. He told you that stability required purity. He told you that a human could never belong in the House of Valor. Kalor gestured to the massive holographic screen above the throne. I present to you the record of the Eros Gate. The video played. The same video Saris had shown Gabe. The burning bridge. The defiance. The rescue. A hush fell over the hall. The nobles watched, stunned. They saw a human soldier shielding an Aurelian child, their princess with his own body. They saw the butcher risking everything for an enemy. When the video ended, Kalor looked at the crowd. Gabriel Rylan did not marry my daughter for profit, Kalor declared. He married her because it is his nature to protect the House of Valor. He saved the succession 15 years ago. He saved it again 3 months ago. He has paid a blood price for his place here that none of you can match. Kalor turned to Saris. Princess Ceres, the grid demands a node. It demands a sacrifice to ensure the future. What do you say? Saris stepped forward. She was wearing a gown of pure white, but over it, she wore a simple, human leather jacket, Gabe's jacket. It was a statement. The grid is a tool, Saris said, her voice ringing clear. It is a library, not a king. I will not be its battery. I will not be its slave. She reached out and took Gabe's hand on one side, and Mia's on the other. "I choose the chaos of free will," Saris declared. "I choose the uncertainty of life. I chose my husband. And if the oracle cannot calculate the value of love, then the oracle is obsolete." She looked directly at the council. "This marriage is permanent. Mia Rylan is my daughter and heir presumptive, until such time as the line continues. We will live on Crown's Reach, the bridge between our worlds. We will not rule from a tower of glass. We will rule from the threshold." She paused, letting her bioluminescence flare a blinding royal gold. "Any who oppose this union oppose the survivors of Eros. Speak now, or accept the new timeline." Silence. Then, from the back of the hall, a single, slow clap began. It was Leo, the kid from the station who had somehow snuck into the delegation. Then another person clapped, then another. The sound swelled, rising from the commoners. Then the soldiers who had served on the border, and finally, reluctantly, the minor houses. It became a roar. Dravik slumped to his knees, defeated not by a weapon, but by a story he couldn't rewrite. Gabe looked at Saris. She was beaming, crying, and glowing. "We did it," she mouthed. "Not done yet," Gabe whispered. He turned to the Imperator. "Hey, Dad, can we get lunch? Mia is starving." The Imperator blinked, his stern facade cracking into a small, weary smile. "Yes, son," Kalor said. "We can get lunch." Epilogue. 6 months later. The observation deck of Crown's Reach was quiet, but it was no longer empty. It had been renovated. The dark corners were gone, replaced by seating areas, gardens, and playgrounds. It was the anniversary of the day they met. Gabe stood by the railing, looking out at the Orion Nebula. It was just as beautiful as it had been a year ago, but it no longer looked cold. He felt a hand slip into his. "Thinking about jumping?" Saris asked, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Thinking about gravity," Gabe said, "and magnets." "You are getting philosophical in your old age," Saris teased. "I have a good teacher," Gabe smiled. He looked around. Mia was sitting on a bench nearby, showing Imperator Kalor, who was visiting incognito, in a very conspicuous hooded cloak, how to play a video game on her datapad. The ruler of the Dominion was shouting in frustration as his avatar fell into a lava pit. "Do you miss it?" Saris asked. "The quiet life, being a nobody." Gabe looked at his family. He looked at the ring on his finger, a band of Aurelian crystal and human steel intertwined. "I was never a nobody," Gabe said softly. "I was just waiting for my mission." "And is the mission complete, Commander?" Gabe turned to her. He kissed her forehead, right between the delicate ridges of her brow. "No," Gabe said. "The mission is just starting. We have got a whole galaxy to annoy." Saris laughed, her wrists pulsing with the steady, warm light of a sun that would never set. "Then let us get to work, husband." They turned back to the window. 3 figures silhouetted against the burning stars. Not a princess, a soldier, and an orphan, just a family. And in the deep, silent math of the universe, the probability of their happiness settled, finally, at 100%.